I'm saying, so if you get like a blood transfusion, like whether you or donate blood or give blood from somebody or whatever, like does that stick with you for the rest of your life? Like their energy or whatever, or like if you, it kind of like if you have sex, you know, and you like that energy, that DNA swap is with you for the rest of your life. Now, if you have somebody else's blood went through your veins, or vice versa, like, wouldn't that be kind of like the same thing? Really?
Yeah, it would actually be even more, because when, so that would be considered in like religious aspects whenever we receive somebody else's blood, whether we wipe it on us, whether we cut ourselves, back in some of the different rituals of different religions. I'm not going to specifically say any, you know, you can obviously do your research on that, but throughout history, blood sacrifice was huge, because when you gave your blood to somebody else, that is the same as giving your soul to somebody else. So not only within this lifetime will you then be bound to their DNA, but for all existence that they have ever been in, you will be connected to them. And it actually changes time in itself for you and them and many others that are going to be around them, because once that bloodline is connected, then you actually are making a new interverse. So you're making a universe where the two of you were always together or always intertwined in each other's life. Even if it wasn't that you knew that person, because sometimes you don't always have to know them. Sometimes, though, it is the twin flame effect, where when something happens to them on one side of the world, then it will affect you. And all of the karma that comes with their life is attached to you of all eternity until you're cleansed of their blood, in which case, if you have a blood transfusion and then you have a child, that child is not only receiving the blood from you, but is also receiving the ancestry of all that was before them in that other person. You know, if I gave you blood and then you went on to have children, that child would receive your karma, father's karma, and then all of my karma, but also all of my abilities and all of my knowledge and all of the space and consciousness. So they would be able to come to the same conclusions, think a lot like you. It would actually change not only the DNA structure of the body, but it would change the energetic code, the electric, magnetic, chemically energized coding that you would carry with you throughout eternity. And then also it is possible for universes to overlap and oversee at that time, and times to cross, because if, let's say, once again, in the scenario that I gave you my blood, and you're currently not a healer, but if I give you my blood and we have that transfusion, suddenly you wake up and you have the abilities to be a healer because you gained my abilities. Or if I, same retrospect, if I was very depressed, I had a lot of illnesses, not necessarily anything that would stop me from doing, blood work or anything to transfer blood to you, but maybe down the line, I'm going to get cancer in 5 years and those cancer cells aren't activated. It is theoretically possible that at the same time then that I receive cancer, your cells would be activated, and therefore you would be receiving that same activation, and you would actually go into cancer. Or if I receive dementia, that's a potential threat now to your existence and anybody that is born into that new bloodline.
What?
Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay, so what about organs? So, if you go, say, get a heart transplant, now, somebody, broke the last person's heart, whoever's heart that was, right?
Yeah.
Now, would you run into this random stranger, as far as you're concerned, on the street, and then all of a sudden, you just, have a rush of emotions?
Absolutely.
I mean, wouldn't you, at that point, have their heart chakra?
Absolutely. Anytime that we receive their organs, it's the same thing. I mean, that's absolute DNA, you're going to have some kind of blood transference there. Your DNA is going to be there. And especially in the sense of organs, because that's something that is very focused on this life alone. So in saying that, not only will you receive the bloodlines, but because it's so close, because it's on Earth's universal energy line, it is connected to the collective conscious. It is a part of, I mean, you're, at this point, the question is, are you the wave or are you the particle of this person? Because when they put that pebble in your water, per se, you're going to get that ripple, and now you're the one radiating out. But at the same time, all of that energetic coding was particles of the other person. So this is one of those really, really tricky ones where, as a healer, when I go in, who am I going to be healing? Am I going to be healing this person, or am I healing the person before them, so that the body that now holds that organ can continue to go on? We've seen throughout science, a lot has been proven as far as, somebody passes away and a mother passes away, and her eyes were given to somebody else. And suddenly their vision not only changed, but the things that they saw, they recognized as their old being. And so there was an incident where somebody was walking down the road, and this person that had mother's new eyes saw them on the road, recognized with that eyes, recognized all of the data. It registered within their brain, and suddenly they were one. There's a wonderful YouTube clip that I got to watch where this lady, her father had passed away, and there's, you can't talk for a year. You can't say anything for a year between your donor, and then after a year, you can get the information and decide to call them. So the lady had called this guy, and this guy who received her father's heart knew all of these memories about them. And the lady actually was getting married, and she had this guy walk her down the aisle in representation of her dad, because his personality and his memories were exactly what her dad had, and so yeah. And in like the cases of amputation, it was really interesting, like working as a nurse, because when I was working as a nurse, we would get people that had these amputations, but they would have what's called the phantom pains. And it was really interesting because medical science actually takes that, or they throw it in a dumpster and whatnot. But what I found as I started progressing and recognizing energy is when their legs were being tested on, that's when they had pain. And when people are having phantom pains, they'll say, it feels like somebody's cutting into me. It feels very cold. And this is the processing that they go through during medical science when they take that leg off, and then your leg is given to somebody else. That body part, if embalmed, will stay forever, and you'll feel the pain every time that somebody is medically cutting into your body. Or you might feel, if they're going through the cremation process, you'll feel like you're literally burning on fire, and they can't medically prove, what's happening with these patients that are saying that they internally feel like they're on fire. And a lot of them, if you look at them, are people that have had, things taken out of their body, and they're actually feeling the energy of that lost limb or organ or whatever it is that they had taken out of their body. I can say in Native Indian culture that it is very important to keep your teeth. They put them in their medicine pouches because that's part of you. They keep the hair that they cut because that's part of you. And if you give it away, if you throw it away, if you do anything by giving that body away, then that is a loss of your energy that you can't carry with you. And then it's just this big void that sits there in mercy, I guess, of whoever is the holder of your body part.
So when I go to a salon and I get my hair cut, holy crap.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, hair is a whole nother, I mean, that's your DNA line to your soul that is what holds a lot of your memory. That is one of the, in a lot of religions and stuff, they say not to cut your hair, because if you cut your hair, you lose your connections to God. And you do to yourself too, which is why, like, women especially, when we have breakups, the first thing that we want to do is go get a new haircut, because that's actually cutting off the old you and letting go of it. If you can take that hair and burn it, then you can make that into positive, heated, excited energy. So the best thing to do after you get a haircut is actually ask for that hair and then put it through the processing of fire, or keep it in a jar or something like that, so that those memories and stuff can be around you at all times, and they're not just being thrown into the trash, where everybody else's energy and everybody else's DNA, of their slime, of their sweat, of their, the saliva in their mouth from the food, the DNA from the oils of their hands, once everything goes into a junkyard, then it's really quantumly entangled, because those are all the DNA is meshing together, which then make it so that we are more entangled with these people. And we wouldn't think, me throwing a cup in a dumpster and you throwing a cup in a dumpster would really do much. But if touched, that saliva can touch, and it can actually swap DNA, which would cause a further quantum entangle between ourselves.
What? All of this with my brain today started because I was listening to K102, and there was a story on there about this woman who had been in a nearly fatal accident, but she got blood donated, like a blood donation or whatever to her. And then, 9 years later, she ended up marrying this guy. And they had a conversation about her accident or whatever, and that she had gotten blood, and he was like, oh yeah, I'm a regular donor. And then she got curious and found out that he was actually the one whose blood she got, and now they're married.
Yep, and that's the entanglement, Once we receive somebody else's blood.
A telepathic connection to her, immediately.
Yep.
When he met her.
Yep. And that's exactly what happens. I mean, blood contains water, right? And if we know anything about water, osmosis will always try to find that bigger attraction. So if I give you my blood, and let's say I give you a pint of my blood, your blood will still mix with it, but your blood, or the blood that's in you, will actually always be trying to seek the blood that's in me, because that's actually where it belongs. And so, like I said, once we get into that blood switching and we do that DNA, that we are bound for lifetimes. And that's where, all of these people, when they're doing blood ceremonies and stuff like that, initially in the Christian Bible, altar, the name altar is actually sacrifice. And God had said to put up all of these altars and sacrifice your animals and let their blood drain out. And that blood actually drained through the tabernacle. And then they had to cut the body parts and take them in certain ways depending on your sin and depending on which animal it was. And then they burned the body parts. And it says in there that the body and the burnt offerings was the sweetest smell that God had ever smelled, because it's renewing energy. It's letting that energy go. But Aaron, the first priest that was ever in the tabernacle, that was told by Moses to make essentially the first church, or the first place of holy worship, how he got anointed was actually through blood. And it was through the blood of the people and the blood of the animals. And they would take that and wipe it on their forehead and wipe it on their ears and put it on their hands. And that was the bonding between them and all things, was they did that through the blood. And through the blood, you receive all information. So they received the blood of the people, they received the blood of the plants, they received the blood of the animals. And that then gave Aaron, the priest, knowledge and power through having all of those things encased in his body, to to be able to preach and speak of the things that he spoke of. But it was blood sacrifices and blood anointing was actually what religion started on, because of the fact that it is binding.
Yeah, let's say like if someone were pregnant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then either had like a miscarriage or got an abortion. Then what? Like, that blood is spilled. Somebody's got to clean it up, right?
Yeah.
Where does it go? Where does that energy go?
It's absorbed through the mom. And most of the time, those children don't leave. They'll actually stay on the side of the mom the whole time. Spirit is still bound to them, but not the physical realm. Like, in doing energy work and stuff, I can see when people have unborn children. And actually, that's a process of something that I do, is that people that have miscarried, or people that have aborted, or people that, for whatever reason, they had to get their uterus taken out, but they still needed to conceive. There was still some energies that were waiting to come in. So we'll actually go through the whole process of rebirth. It sounds crazy, but the mom will actually feel pregnant. She'll feel kicking and everything within the child. And then we wait until the mom enjoys her pregnancy, and then she'll actually start contractions. And then we physically have the baby. I'll get up on the table and put her legs up on me, and we birth the baby, and we still go through that time realm when they were supposed to have the child. And so that way it brings closure and it carries them out, rather than being stuck with that energy the whole time. We can actually energetically birth that energy out. And then that energy is now like a spirit guide to them. And ironically, in the processing of doing that, I've even had moms come and say, weeks, months later, that they feel the kid running around, or that the kid will come and lay on their chest, or the kid will come and hug them at their legs or something. Because even though they didn't have that physical embodiment, they were able to have that spiritual embodiment. It's so all intertwined and intertangled. It's just, yeah. I mean, and outside of bloodline, I mean, realistically, anyone that you talk to, hear from, see, acknowledge in any way, shape, or form through any of your senses, you're also attached to all of them. It's completely impossible to be independent on this world. That it doesn't even exist, and it was never a word that should exist in our vocabulary. Being independent was never a thing, because the second that I am born into this world, my frequencies, my lights, my energetic coding of shapes are now having to take into consideration my moms and the nurses. And if dad's present in the room, then dad too. But anyone that's in that room has now energetically touched me. And so that made me no longer the wave. Instead, I'm particles of all of these people. And the more that I grow up, even watching TV, even walking through the stores, anyone I acknowledge, anyone that I see on the radio, anyone that I hear, they become particles of me. And so the older that I get, and the more that I talk to, and the more I associate with people, or the more I watch people or animals or plants or, nature, the more that I involve myself into this reality, the more I become this reality and less Melissa. And that's why truly we won't find happiness on this world until everyone's happy, and especially the clair empaths. We'll have moments of happiness, but because we are particles of all, and if I'm particle of you and you're particle of James Bond, like you guys have met or whatever, and then James Bond met, and of course I'm just making up all these names, he meets Lincoln or something like that. I'm not so much physically attached to Lincoln, but because the dots of the particles went when you came into contact with James Bond, you switched particles with them, which made me switch particles with them, which made them, and then when they're with Lincoln, then that switched particles. So essentially, because of the networking and the lineage of the energy that is going on, I am energetically attached to Abraham Lincoln. And energetically, I'm attached to the entire world because we are all networking in one way, shape, or form. And we might not, looking at dot to dot, I might have number 1 and you might be 24. Are we directly linked? No. But through the process of the lineage of energy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way going up, eventually that line of energy that started at that number 1 space will connect to that line of 24. It's not a direct connect or you wouldn't get the shape, but you had to go through all of the channels to get that shape, and shapes in reality are just molded consciousness. I mean, that's what sacred geometry is the different aspects of life from other people adding on. So if you're a square and I'm a circle, either we're going to come together and our sacred geometry is going to fit a square and a circle, or they're going to mesh and then it's going to turn into a mandala and not conform.